I am a firm believer that God does open doors, doors that no man can shut. But I also believe he does not open doors for people that aren't already moving their feet. They have got to be active. They got to have their hands to the plow. They have got to be busy. They have to, in other words, prepare. Because God is not going to take you to a place that you are not ready for. Think about it. Isn't it interesting? Endeavor with me for one moment. Isn't it interesting that God uses the prophet Samuel to anoint David to be king when Israel already had a king? Isn't it interesting that even though David was anointed, he did not go straight to the palace throne? Isn't it interesting that God identified the successor before the incumbent even fell out of God's favor? Isn't it interesting that while everyone else was kicking their feet up and having a good old time at the party, it was God who was sending lions and bears to test the mettle and faithfulness of a young boy in a pasture? Isn't it interesting that David would be on a mission as a delivery service in order to put him in the right place at the right time? Isn't it interesting that even though he was only delivering cheese sandwiches, David was always prepared and kept his sling ready? Isn't it interesting that God would orchestrate a chain of seemingly unrelated events together in order to set the stage for David's anointing to be unleashed to the masses? Isn't it interesting that the one thing needed to take down the threat and terror of national security, that David was the only one qualified, equipped, and trained and ready for? And I hate to break it to you, Pathway, if you aren't preparing, be prepared to stay right where you are. Because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. The problem is people want the pulpit, but they don't want to avail themselves to study. People want the mic and sing the solo, but they don't want to practice or learn to harmonize with other people. People want to lead millions to Christ, but they don't take the time to get any word up in them. And our problem is, church, my God, I feel you in this place. Our problem is we want dynamite blessings with firecracker commitment. We want manifestation without perspiration. You will not have favor where you're not willing to labor. You think it's just anointing? I don't care if you're so anointed that everywhere you walk, you sling oil off your forehead. Because if you don't have a tool in your hand fit for kingdom business, if you don't have some years under your belt, ready, willing, and able to serve God, your feet will still be stationary. Because the only place you're going to find success before work is in the dictionary. God says, I don't exalt strange fire. I don't raise up people that I'm not familiar with, and I sure enough don't put them in places that I didn't call them to. You better know that promotion comes with practice and preparation.